Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to all of you in third lecture of our Saturday series, Life After Cardiac Event. Today's lecture is about investigations in cardiovascular health and disease. Basically, whenever you visit your physician or a cardiologist, your tests will start with interrogation, with asking you what are your symptoms, the duration of the symptoms, the precipitating factors for your symptoms, and variety of other problems which may be trying to find out what are the comorbidities, like for example hypertension, diabetes, or any family history of any cardiac illness, etc. Now, there have been many advances in the medical technology in the recent past. And in fact, I would say that your tests start with the use of stethoscope, blood pressure monitoring apparatus, to taking your pulse properly and taking your history in detail. Because all these make a format, make a background for assessing your risk for having a cardiovascular problem. Now, the doctor will also, after having had all these preliminary clinical examinations done, will ask you for certain tests. Now, to make it simple for you, I would say that the tests have been classified into those which are non-invasive and the ones which are more invasive. Now, by the term non-invasive, it means that the tests are very simple, straightforward, they do not require introduction of any foreign material or giving injections, etc. And some of the non-invasive tests which I have just mentioned here on the screen are ECG, X-ray chest, Holter monitoring or ambulatory ECG as well as ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. You all are aware of certain other non-invasive tests like echocardiography. Echocardiography is of two types. The one which is commonly performed, and all of you know about this, is the transthoracic echocardiography. But the other one, which requires more specialized equipments, echocardiography machines, and more skills, they are called as transesophageal echocardiography. There is also a test called as stress echocardiography, and other non-invasive tests like upright tilt table test. More advanced non-invasive tests are positive emission tomography, the thallium testing, and CT angiography, as well as magnetic resonance imaging of the heart. There are more specialized tests called as endothelial function tests or the genetic tests. The invasive tests, all of us are aware, are most importantly the angiography or the cardiac catheterization. The other invasive tests are electrophysiological testing and intravascular ultrasound or FFR estimation. ECG test. Now, what is ECG? Electrocardiogram is nothing but recording the electrical impulses which are generated by the heart. You all know that heart has important components like heart valves, which is called as the endocardial aspect or the innermost part of the heart. Then you have heart muscle, which is called as the myocardium, and then there is a covering of the heart, which is called as the pericardium. But most important component of the heart is also an electrical system, about which is very well established, but unfortunately not very well known to common people. This electrical system is responsible for generating an electrical current located in the top right chamber of the heart, from where it will traverse down to a relay center which is located between the top and the lower chamber, and from this relay center the impulse will spread to the entire lower chamber of the heart, which is the ventricle. Now, with this, each impulse which passes from top chamber to the lower chamber, one complex is recorded. And what is this complex? What you see on the screen are the multiple complexes made of various waves, and these waves indicate the electrical impulse passing through variety of cardiac chambers and variety of areas. A normal heartbeat on ECG will show the timing of the top and the lower chambers. Now, more advanced ECG, where you do the monitoring of the ECG for a longer period of time, sometimes 24 hours, sometimes 3 days, and even for as long as 7 days to 6 months. This is called as ambulatory ECG monitoring. What is done here is that, as you can see in the figure, the electrodes are connected to various positions on the chest wall, and this is then connected to a box which is called as the monitor or the Holter, which is continuously recording all the impulses or all the data of the ECG. Now, this ECG test, which is called as the ambulatory ECG, provides a continuous monitoring over a long period of time. And this test can intermittent abnormalities that can be missed by an ordinary ECG, because ordinary ECG is a snapshot. It is only done at that particular point in time. But what if a patient gets occasional symptoms, but it may not be recorded on an ECG? What if a person gets dizzy, giddy, gets fainting episodes intermittently? What if a person gets a lot of palpitations which are coming on and off? The best way is to get a Holter monitoring done, whereby the chances of yield or chances of detecting a particular problem increase. Now, this is another special type of ECG recording, which is called as the exercise electrocardiography. In this particular test is that there is a treadmill. All of us know what a treadmill is, and the ECG's cable is connected to this particular type of a machine, which has a monitor which shows a continuous recording of the electrocardiogram. The person exercises on a treadmill, the heart rate increases, the blood pressure increases, what is called as the double product increases. It is the product of the systolic blood pressure to the heart rate. When this increases, the stress on the heart will increase. And if there are blocks in the heart arteries, then the mismatch of demand and supply will occur. Because if there is an increased demand because of exercise, and if it is not met because of blocks in the heart arteries supplying the blood to the heart muscle, then there will be a drop in the blood flow. And this will manifest with specific type of ECG change which can be recorded during exercise stress testing. This is a very, very commonly performed test, and I'm sure all of you have seen it. This is called as a simple echo, in which the person is made to lie on one side, and there is a probe, which is an ultrasound probe, basically will record the cardiac images as are seen on the monitor here. That is the color Doppler, which will tell you about the directions of the blood flow, and this is the conventional Doppler, which will record the various velocities of blood in the heart chambers. And this will help you to assess the problem and the severity of the problem. The next test is the transesophageal echocardiography. You have seen the transthoracic echocardiography. In this particular test, the probe is placed externally on the chest wall. In transesophageal echocardiography, the probe is passed through the mouth under a very gentle sedation, through the oropharynx, through the esophagus, which is the food pipe and which lies exactly behind the heart. Thereby, very clean, crisp, and a good image of the heart and cardiac chambers is obtained. Sometimes it becomes difficult to obtain good images by way of transthoracic echocardiography. Sometimes it becomes very difficult to assess a disease severity very well by transthoracic echocardiography. It becomes sometimes very, very difficult to scan a very, very small clot which may be sitting in one of the small cardiac chambers by transthoracic echocardiography. But transesophageal cardiography makes it very, very simple, and this particular test provides images of the heart that may be very difficult to obtain during a conventional echocardiography. As we have seen a stress, there is also a test called as stress echocardiogram. And this is nothing but it combines a stress test along with the echocardiography. And therefore, the specificity and the sensitivity of picking up a problem in a particular patient when you stress the person and do the echocardiogram immediately after stress testing, it is enhanced and you are able to pick up the problems in detail. Coming to ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. As you have already seen what is ambulatory Holter monitoring, the ambulatory blood pressure also is very, very similar to that, in which the patient is tied a blood pressure apparatus around either left or right arm, and the person is allowed to go home, carry out all his routine activities that he may be doing or she may be doing in 24 hours. And this particular device will keep on recording blood pressure at a set interval, which may be 30 minutes or it may be 1 hour. But once again, this will give you a very good idea about a person's blood pressure status. Because many times what happens is a person walking into the clinic will tend to have what is called as white coat hypertension, and the blood pressure may be recorded as much higher than what normally is. But an ambulatory blood pressure will help you to find out whether it is a white coat hypertension or true hypertension. It will also tell you at what particular time of the day the blood pressure is rising. So it will enable you to plan the treatment and the timings accordingly. And as I said before, your doctor is able to get a clear idea of how your blood pressure changes occur throughout the day to decide about the timings of your medications, which is very, very crucial. This particular test is once again very, very well known and is talked about multiple times, the coronary angiography. The coronary angiography is performed in a place called as cardiac catheterization lab. What you see here on the screen is the angiography procedure, which is done through the radial route, which means an artery of the hand. This has now become a very, very routine to do the angiography or even angioplasty and multiple other interventions which are of therapeutic benefit through the radial route. This avoids a lot of problems like groin complications due to femoral route or leg artery angiography, like hematoma or occurrence of pseudoaneurysm, which is nothing but a bleb like thing which develops on top of the artery after angiography or angioplasty. This is how the sheath or a hollow tube is introduced into the artery of the hand, and this is all done under local anesthesia. So it was actually not as painful to the patient as it must have been to some of the viewers here. It is a very, very painless and a very straightforward procedure. The whole procedure lasts not. This is a which is introduced into the sheath which has already been placed into the artery, and this is slowly advanced into the heart, and this is how the pictures of the heart arteries are obtained. This is called as angiography. Various views are taken to ascertain the number of blocks and the severity of blocks. Sometimes whenever there is hypertension or the person is known to have had high blood pressure, we also check the kidney arteries, which are currently seen on your screen. After the angiography, the sheath is removed and a tight pressure bandage is applied. Patient can immediately walk off the table and is monitored for a couple of hours in the daycare area and can be discharged on the same day. It has therefore become extremely simple nowadays to perform angiography without any local complications. The pacemaker is implanted for variety of reasons like AV blocks, very slow symptomatic heart rates, or sometimes when the very rapid as is seen on the screen, it is called as tachyarrhythmias for control of some fatal tachyarrhythmias like ventricular tachycardia or ventricular fibrillation. Certain important pacemaker like devices are also implanted, which are called as implantable cardioverter and defibrillator, which will restore the heart's rhythm back to normal. What you see here on the screen is also called as the programmer. After person has had an implanted pacemaker or ICD or CRT, this particular programmer will assess the functioning of these devices, and the patients are called on an outpatient basis, and after having interrogated their devices, patients can be sent home immediately within 15 to 20 minutes of assessment of their devices. That is called as the programming of the devices. Next test is the electrophysiological study. It is also called as EP study in short form. Here on the screen, you see that there are multiple catheters. You see these catheters? They are placed at various locations in the heart, and these catheters will pick up the electrical impulses which are locations within the heart. Once you have recorded various signals, you know exactly which way the electrical impulse is traversing in the heart. With the same mechanism, the tachycardia or a fast heart rate is induced, similar to what a person may be experiencing in real life, the palpitations. During palpitations, the electrophysiological study is performed to find out what is the exact migratory pathway of the impulse to locate the abnormality, and thereby, after imparting a radio frequency current, this particular abnormality can be corrected. The next test sometimes is performed in people who report syncope or loss of consciousness, people who report this on several occasions, people who report sudden dizzy feeling. This particular test is also called as HUTT, that is head up tilt table test. In this, the person is given a prone position like this as is seen on the screen, and for some time an inclined upright position may be given to the patient like this. But this leads to certain autonomic changes in the body, like change in the heart rate, change in the blood pressure, which can all be monitored, and we can come to a conclusion about the cause of loss of consciousness or feeling of dizziness in certain number of people. The next important test is a PET scan or a thallium scan. I am sure you have heard of these tests, but they are more advanced and they are performed by specialists which are not necessarily cardiologists, but they are the nuclear physicians who are trained in these areas. What is a PET scan? The full form, of course, is positron emission tomography. In this, what is done is that the metabolizing tissue, that is a tissue which is utilizing active metabolizing ingredients like glucose, the tissue which is alive, tissue which is capable of consuming glucose. A radiolabeled glucose is injected into the vein. It circulates through the heart muscle, and obviously the heart muscle which is alive, which is metabolizing, which is consuming energy in the form of glucose, will take up this particular radio-labeled glucose and therefore will appear as a hot spot as you are seeing here. The areas which are not very well seen, you can see in this particular figure that at the site of arrow, there is actually not as much enhancement, or you don't see that very clearly, whereas the other side, for example this one, or for example this one, are seen brighter and clearer. This means that this particular area has a viable myocardium, or a myocardium or the heart muscle which is alive, and this particular area probably does not have a heart muscle which is alive. Occasionally, after having done the angiography, to assess whether your heart muscle is functioning normally or not, whether your heart muscle is alive or not, whether you will benefit from some kind of a revascularization procedure like an angioplasty or bypass surgery or not, this particular test is performed. And likewise, a thallium scan can also be performed to find out if the severity that is seen in your angiography is severe enough to cause a reduction in the blood flow after making the person exercise. Computed tomographic angiography or the CT angiography, you can see that the pictures are obtained like this, but here you don't have to introduce a catheter into the heart to get images like this. I feel that there are very specific indications where a CT angiography of your heart arteries can be performed. I don't think it is an alternative to stress test, and I don't think it should be just very casually and randomly performed, because you have to take into account what is the renal function, what is the kidney function, what is the creatinine level, what is the hydration status, whether the person has other comorbid problems like significant diabetes of long-standing duration. You also have to take into account whether person has some kinds of special blood dyscrasias like plasma cell dyscrasias, which will make the person to have significant kidney failure in case CT angiography is done. However, certain individuals may be better candidates to perform CT angiography, and I would personally think that wherever the probability of having critical blocks is low, CT angiography may be an appropriate procedure to perform. But if person has clear indication on the stress test, if the person has already had a heart attack, if the patient has already been admitted in a hospital with unstable angina like symptom, then it is better to perform a catheter angiogram than a computer coronary angiography. In interventional practices of mine, I perform computer tomography angiography under special circumstances, like for example, carrying out very high risk angioplasty in a totally occluded vessel of a long standing duration. I sometimes ask for CT angiography even after a catheter angiography. But I think it is up to your cardiologist to decide whether you are an appropriate person to have this or not. Magnetic resonance imaging, or the MRI of the heart, is an important test. It gives you a lot of anatomical outline about the heart. It gives a very, very clear outline in patients who have congenital heart diseases. It also allows you to quantify the blood flows, and in my opinion, it should be used in situations like infections of the heart, what is called as the myocarditis. It is also used in certain number of patients who get tachyarrhythmias of lower chambers of the heart or the ventricle. So MRI must be used judiciously, appropriately, and it gives a wealth of information. Intravascular ultrasound, sometimes your cardiologist might say that ultrasound of the coronary arteries has to be performed along with angioplasty, and that is because there are specific reasons why it is performed. The endothelial function testing is not very commonly performed, but it is a non-invasive test sometimes. One of the simple tests is a flow-mediated dilatation, where a cuff is tied to the arm and the diameter of the vessel beyond the tourniquet is first visualized with ultrasound, and after the tourniquet is released, the dilatation of the artery is assessed, and the ratios are calculated. But of course, they are not very commonly performed. Another common test which may be performed either by your cardiologist or by one of your vascular surgeons is the ankle brachial index, or ABI. Basically, as I have already said before, uh, coronary artery disease is the blockages in the heart arteries, but you can get blocks in the peripheral arteries, especially the legs or the lower legs. If you have to find out whether they have developed blocks or not, lower leg arteries, you do this test called as ABI. The normal ABI is between 0.9 to 1.3. The ankle blood pressure, or the blood pressure which is taken at the ankle level, is usually slightly higher than the blood pressure which is taken at the elbow. It is the ratio of the blood pressure in the arm compared to that in the ankle, and these pressures are measured with a Doppler ultrasound. The goal, as I said, is to detect any peripheral vascular disease of the lower legs. These are specialized testing. These testings will allow the young individuals at risk of having coronary artery disease or having dyslipidemias. There are certain number of congenital heart diseases also which are prone in particular familial subsets or in particular type of genetic subsets. And this particular genetic testing can be performed and is not very easily available at all centers, but it is able to diagnose young individuals who are at a high risk of having coronary artery disease or dyslipidemias like familial hypercholesterolemia or certain types of congenital heart diseases. But of course, you have to seek an opinion of your cardiologist, of your physician, to be in need of performing these tests. In summary, I think it is very, very important that we all understand that all these procedures are very crucial and they aid the cardiologist or the clinician in the assessment and prognostication of your heart ailment. They are also important to be able to diagnose and provide you the best treatment option, because when you have a lot of information from these tests, your doctor will be able to tell you precisely what exactly is the problem and what exactly is the best option for that particular problem. Test results must be always interpreted judiciously, and let me tell you that it is very, very important that there has to be a correlation between clinical findings, clinical assessment, and these tests. Cardiologists or physicians must very, very clearly explain the reason for performing a particular test and also discuss, once the test reports are available, the interpretation of that particular test. Lastly, I want to say that tests should be appropriately advised, but of course, this is for my doctor colleagues, and should be used to cure a particular disease and not to create patients in the society. With this, I want to thank all of you, and once again, to stay updated with my latest videos and cardiology related important tips, like and follow Hardas Heart Care official Facebook and Instagram page. If you are watching this video on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to this channel and click on the notification bell. That way, whenever I come back with a new video, you will be notified. And once, thank you very much for your love and support, and see you soon. Have a great weekend. Namaste.